Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me and see me well. My name is Rosita. I'm a product marketing manager here at Zenphi. I'm very happy to see you all today. Thank you so much for joining and finding a time. So today we want to show you some practical ways of how you can accelerate your financial operations using no-code process automation and AI technologies. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll gain a clear understanding of how those technologies can be used in real life processes. And also, you'll have some ideas and inspiration for what you can automate and optimize in your current operations. So before we begin, I just wanted to quickly highlight a few moments. So first of all, this session is being recorded and you will receive a recording within a couple of days after the webinar, right to your email inbox. And secondly, we'll have some time for the Q&A session at the end. But if you have a question right now, please feel free to use Q&A section, which is located at the bottom of your screen, and our success team will be answering as we go. So with that, let's start by defining what those technologies are, and especially for those of you who are new to the world of automation. And let me just quickly switch to my slides. So, no-code process automation is a solution that addresses the challenges associated with manual processes. And these challenges usually include time-consuming and error-prone tasks that can affect your organization's efficiency. And process automation not only helps you run your financial operations much faster, but it also does that in a cost-effective manner. And ultimately, process automation allows your team to focus on human work. And what sets no-code automation apart compared to traditional coding, for example, it's accessibility. So anyone who can map out a process on a flowchart can automate it. You don't need any programming experience. You don't have to rely on IT resources. With a simple drag and drop interface, you can take charge of automating your own processes. And now, talking about another component in boosting your finance operations, intelligent document processing, or IDP. IDP is an AI-driven technology that puts your financial documentation on autopilot. And it involves the extraction of data from a wide range of documents, such as invoices, purchase orders, bank statements, bills, or any custom documents, really. And IDP not only automatically extracts this data, but it can also seamlessly process it based on your business requirements. And for those of you who are new to Zenphi, it's a no-code business process automation platform built specifically for Google Workspace. And Zenphi offers an ultimate solution that combines the power of no-code business process automation and intelligent document processing. And this combination isn't just about automating individual tasks, it's about orchestrating entire processes seamlessly end-to-end. And right now, we'll jump straight into Zenphi and see how these three processes can be automated. So we'll see invoice processing, purchase order processing, and expense approval. So let me quickly switch to my Zenphi account. Alright, so for those of you who are new to the platform, let me just quickly walk you through how it all organized here. So inside each Zenphi account, you will find multiple spaces where you can automate and manage your processes. And inside the space, you'll have automated workflows that we call just flows, tables where you can store the data from your automated flows, the AI models that use IDP technology to extract data from your financial documents, and we also have dashboards where we can display our process performance metrics. So today we'll talk about all of those items, and we'll start with the core element of process automation, which is flows. And the first flow that I wanted to show you is quite simple, yet it's very effective because it will free you up from a few manual tasks and it will help you process invoice faster. And even though we'll use invoice processing for this demo, you can easily apply this approach to any document such as bills, statements, or others. So that's how your automated process can look like. Each workflow consists of the trigger, the event that initiates the automation execution, and the actions, the further steps of the workflow. So let's say that we want to process each invoice that came through email by saving it to the specified Google Drive location and logging the invoice data to Google Sheets. And to do that, we set up an email arrival trigger. Let's open this one. So as you can see, this email arrival trigger is connected to the specified Gmail account. So Zenphi will go and check all of the incoming emails that we have inside this Gmail account. But we don't want all of the incoming emails to trigger the process, and that's why we set up some additional conditions as well. So we'll go to the conditional run. And for example, we want this automation to trigger only when this email has at least one email attachment and the subject contains invoice there. Again, you can easily customize these conditions to meet your specific requirements. And as you noticed, we can access the data from the workflow steps, and we do that using a token picker. So most of the steps will have some output data. So for example, with the Gmail trigger, we'll have various parameters that we can use further in the workflow, such as email ID, estimated size of the email, the sender's email address, the subject, the HTML body, etc. So as far as we can have multiple email attachments inside each email, we'll use for each attachment action that will create a loop to process each invoice that is contained in the email. Then what we want to do, we want to run an AI model that is built on the IDP technology to extract some data from our invoice. And let me quickly show you how you can set up this model. So first, once you create a new model and choose the document type, you will upload an example of an invoice that you received from your supplier. And Zenphi will go and automatically recognize and map out the common invoice properties, like the invoice date, invoice ID, total amount. And if you see that this is correct data, you will just tick it, and by that you will select the properties that you're interested in, and they will appear in the selected fields. Now let's return to our workflow, and now as we set up our AI model, we will use run AI model action. Select the model that we've just created and indicate that we want the email attachment to go through this model. And when the workflow reaches this step, it will extract the specified data, which we can utilize further in our workflow. So I have provided just a brief overview of setting up this model. However, if you want to learn more about how this works and how you can streamline your processes with IDP technology, I highly recommend checking out one of our previous webinars that was dedicated specifically to this topic. And our success team will send you the link so you can watch it at your convenience. But for now, let's focus on invoice processing. And the next step of our workflow will save the process invoice to a specified location. So here we'll use the create folder action. We'll specify the folder name. So let's say we want a separate drive folder for each supplier, and we take that name from the AA model output data. We also have the option to indicate the parent folder ID, and we also can use the checking for existing folder function that will find the folder by the name if it already exists, and it will not create a new duplicate folder. Then we will save the invoice inside the Google Drive folder that we have just created, and the setup is straightforward as well. We will specify the file payload from the previous attachment action, the destination folder ID, and customize the item name using some unique invoice properties like supplier name, invoice ID, and invoice date, and it will help us to easily locate it in the future. And the final step in our workflow is adding a new row to Google Sheets where we want to store the information about our invoice. So that's how your Google Sheets can look like. You will just create a new column for each invoice property that you want to log. And then we go back to Zenphi and indicate this specific Google Sheet inside the file ID field. We'll also specify the sheet name. And once we've done that, we will click on Load Headers button. Zenphi will go and automatically upload all of the headers from that Google Sheet. And what you need to do is just map columns with the values that you extracted from the AA model. So now let's test our workflow and see all of those steps in action. And with the test run feature, you can do that really quickly. So when you test the flow, you can select the data that will be used for it. And if you ran the flow previously, you can choose the first option, or if you run it for the first time, we can just pick the email from the inbox. So I have earlier sent the test invoice. Here it is. And I'll just select it. And before that, let me just quickly show you what invoice has been sent. So here is the invoice sample with the vendor name and invoice ID, the date, so all the information that you can expect to be in the invoice. So let's click on Start. And from the left sidebar, we'll be able to track the steps of the workflow. So we see that it read the email, and for each attachment inside this email, it started to process the AA model. Then it created a folder, saved a file, and added the row to Google Sheet. So let's check that. So we can see that the new Google Drive folder was created with the name of the vendor that was specified in the invoice. And if we open the folder, we can see that there is an invoice. And all the invoice data has been logged to Google Sheets as well. And we see that all of the data is correct. So now we can close our test workflow. And once you're ready, you can also click on Publish, and the workflow will be launched. So now let's take a look at the second workflow. So the beauty of no-code process automation is how easily it can be adapted to the changes in your business requirements. So let's say that you decided to log your invoice data in some other base instead of Google Sheets, for example in Zenphi table. And let's say that you now store the invoices themselves in Dropbox instead of Google Drive, and you also want to implement some approval routing. And in this case, we'll just take the same basic scenario as our base and build up on it. And without digging deep into the details, I just wanted to run you through this workflow to give you an idea of what's possible. So we'll start with the same email arrival trigger. Then we add additional action, which is called current date time. And it allows you to capture the date and time in the specified time zone and also in the format that you need. And you'll see where we'll need this information further in the workflow. Then there are no changes. The same for each loop action and AI model, but here we're adding the Dropbox actions. And the action setup is pretty much the same as in the Google Drive. So as you can see, again, we're using the token picker to specify the folder name. Also, we can select the parent folder path. And the next thing we want to do is log the invoice data to Zenphi table. So Zenphi table is our built-in database where you seamlessly store and manage your process data. That's how it looks like. So I have gone and created some columns for invoices like invoice ID, invoice date, supplier email, total tax amount and total amount, as well as approval duration and the invoice status. And as you can see, near each column, you will have this small icon that shows you the individual data type that connected to this column. And with those types, it's going to be easier for us to process the data, for example, to perform some math operations, count the difference, and more. So let's switch back to the workflow. And the next step would be our approval routing. So let's say that if the invoice total amount is bigger than 90, we'll want to send it to the manual approval. And for that, we'll use the get record action to get the total amount. And with the if condition action, we're creating the logic. And with Zenphi, you can easily create approval workflows, and you can include as many approval layers as you need. So it can be just one person who needs to approve, or it can be two people, as in this example. So let's say that you want this invoice to be sent to the manager first. And then if they approve, you also want to send it to the director. And only if we get approval from both parties, we can proceed to the next step. And for this, we'll use the state machine action. Now, if you're interested to learn more about this action and also how to set those multi-layer approvals in more detail, we'll send you the link to the step-by-step tutorial on how to do that to the chat. But right now, let's just take a look at a high level. So starting with if condition, here we'll just specify that if the total amount that we got from the get record action greater than 90, then we will go to the state machine. And state machine action will create two branches for us. The first one for the manager's approval and the second one for the director's approval. So let's start with the manager. And to assign an approval task to the manager, we'll use assign task action. So the assignee will receive this task through the email, and they will receive the information about this task. They will need to choose between two options. They can approve or they can reject. And also we attaching the invoice so they can have the full information about it in this task. And then based on the manager's response, we'll log the invoice status to Zenphi table. So again, we're using if condition action, and we're saying that when approval task response equal to approve, then we want to update our invoice status in Zenphi table using update record action. And for the rejection scenario, we can use the send email action for the notification, for example. And if it's approved, then we change the state and go to the director's part of the approval workflow. And with the director's approval, it's gonna be absolutely the same, but as you remember, we also wanted to capture the approval time to understand how much time it took for each invoice to be approved, and for that we'll be using the date difference action. So here we'll just take the current date time that we got from the first action, and here in the end date we'll take the approval task response date, and then Zenphi will automatically count the difference in the specified format. So in this example we're interested in minutes, and then we'll take this date difference and put it to Zenphi table with the new invoice status. And the final step of the workflow would be changing the status of the invoice to scheduled for payment and sending the approved invoice to accounts payable team's email. Okay, so now let's use our test run once again to see all of this in action. So let's select the same email with the same invoice sample. Okay, we see that it started the execution. Okay, so the folder was created inside the Dropbox, and also file should be saved by now. And let's check that. Okay, we see that inside the Dropbox we now have this file. We also see that the record was created inside the Zenphi table. Okay, we can see that everything was captured correctly, and now we see the status of the invoice is set to received. And as far as our total amount is greater than 90, we should have received the approval task that was sent to the manager's email. And I used the demo email for that. Let's check if we received the task. Okay, so we see that the task has been received, and that's how it will look like. So as you can see, we have two options, and let's choose the approved. Okay, so here we see now that it went and assigned a new task, and now it was assigned to the director. Okay, we see that it was assigned correctly as well, and let's click on approve. Let's go back to Zenphi. Okay, we see that this step was successful, And the test has been completed. We should now see the updates inside the Zenphi table. Let's refresh. Okay, and we see that the approval duration was about 3 minutes, and now the status is successful and it's scheduled for payment. So just like that, we have successfully supercharged our initial basic invoice processing workflow by adding multi-layer approval workflow and more advanced invoice data capturing to Zenphi table. And having the invoice data inside the Zenphi table is not only convenient because you have all your process information under one roof, but also because you can easily create real-time interactive dashboards that you can use further for your process optimization. So let me quickly show you how this works. So this is an example of the table where you have more invoice records, and if you want to display some metrics out of those records, you'll go and create dashboard pages. So that's how they look like. Inside each dashboard page, you will have multiple widgets. For example, it can be just total numbers displayed. For example, the number of invoices that are in progress or already processed. It can be series charts with the invoice allocation. It can be grids with the invoices that you filter somehow. What else? Here we also can create pie charts, or we can track our invoices per status in this Kanban view. We can even track our invoices in the calendar view, for example, by due date. We can also create widgets to track KPIs just like that. And let's create one widget together so you can see how easy it is. So to create a new dashboard page, I will just click here. I will name it like this. And to create a widget, I will go and click here. And let's create a pie chart, for example. So here we'll just say what data source will be used for this dashboard, and it's going to be supplier invoices. Here we'll add the slice. So for example, I want to display my invoices by status, and I will go with the top 5 values, and I will do the same with the size. So I'm interested in all of the invoices. Here I can also hide the other option. I can choose the color for my pie chart, and I also can add some conditions. So for example, if I'm interested in the invoices that are connected to specific date or to specific department, I can do that here. And let's try to do that actually. So let's say that if currency equal to USD. Okay, so now I can see the overview of all the invoices by status that are in the USD currency. Okay, great. Now let's move on to the next part of our demo. And now I wanted to show you some more integration possibilities. So you've seen how easily you could connect to your Google Workspace environment like Google Sheets, Google Drive, Gmail, etc. But you are not limited to Google Tools only. You can also connect to your external platforms like we've seen in the Dropbox example. And if we go back to the Flow Designer, we'll have a rich set of actions that you can use to automate your processes. So whatever you use in your daily operations like Slack, Salesforce, Asana, Jira, you can connect to them as well. And even if you can't find the tools you need, no worries. You can connect to actually any platform that supports API using our HTTP action. So you can find it like this. And moreover, you can write to our support chat and request the integration that you need, because we constantly adding more and more of these. And the integration that we released recently would be pretty useful for any finance team who uses Quickbooks. So with these new actions, you can automatically manage your bills, your vendors, your expenses, and more. So let's say that you want to create a bill for each received invoice. And for that, you will just drag and drop the needed action right here and set this up. So you will need to connect to your QuickBooks account. Then you will be able to specify the vendor. So you can do that from the drop down, or you can also use the token picker and use the same output data from your AI model. So let's specify the supplier name here. You can also choose your term ID. And for the due date, as far as we don't have the due date in our invoice, but we can count it right in the workflow. So we have the invoice date, and let's say that we promise to process all invoices within a week. Then we will go back to the workflow and we'll use the action called add date time. And here as our base date, we'll use the invoice date from the AI model. And here we can add any amount of time, and let's add 7 days. And now here in the due date, we'll just use the output data from this action. Okay, for the bill number, we can use the invoice ID. The same goes for the transaction date. So here we can also choose the category. So let it be accounts payable. The next step would be adding our item details. So again, we take the data from our AI model. So here we have the information about each item. So here we can map out the product code, description, amount, quantity, etc. And we can attach the invoice itself. So with this set of integrations that are available to you out of the box, you can imagine how easily it will be for you to automate your processes end to end. So the final use case that I wanted to show you is the expense reimbursement. And that's a pretty popular scenario for the Zenphi customers as well. So that's why we have a special template for it. And if you haven't already, you can easily launch it inside your Zenphi account and play around with it. So to launch this template, you just need to create a new space and find the expense reimbursement template. There you will just need to establish a few connections and you're all set. But what I will do, I will open the template that I have launched earlier, and I have just made some minor adjustments to show you additional functionality, but other than that, it's absolutely the same. So inside this space template, you'll have access to a couple of workflows. one for the expense request submission and one for the cancellation. You'll also have the table to track the expenses, and you will also have a few useful pre-bill dashboards. And apart from the widgets that you're already familiar with, we also have a special one. So inside each dashboard page, you can also insert web pages. And here is the great example of how you can utilize that. So you can leave the expense reimbursement form right in this space. So it will work as the expense portal where you can track the expenses and also allow employees to submit them as well right from here. So you can start your automation from any form you usually use, like Google form or Typeform, but in this example we use built-in Zenphi form. And let me show you what sets it apart from the others. And let's open the Submit an Expense form. So from the Configuration tab, you will be able to build your form, and from the invocation, you will be able to preview it. So let's open the form builder. And so firstly, it's very powerful in terms of the available question types. So starting from the basic question types like checkboxes, multiple choice, etc., it's extended far beyond that. So for example, you can even capture the digital signatures right from the form to put it to the newly generated Google Docs, for example. Or you can ask for the date and time using one question type only. You can also show the data that you have set inside the Zenphi table. So it's very integrated into Zenphi ecosystem, and it will help you to build your forms, tables, and dashboards much quicker. Secondly, what sets Zenphi forms apart is it's easy to set up logics. So if you need to show a question only to the special part of submitters, you can do that without having to deal with complex sections or branches, and you can do that just in a few clicks. So to create a logic, you can click here, and let's say that I want to ask for some additional documents for those employees who selected accommodation as the expense category. So for that, I will just open the condition and use the same token pickers to indicate that if the expense category is accommodation, then I want to show this additional question, and I will ask to provide me with a booking confirmation. And one of my favorite features here is the possibility to redirect to the custom URL once the form is submitted. So now let's go to the next workflow steps. So once the form is submitted, we run the lookup user information in Google Directory action that will search for the form initiator email and return various parameters that are associated with this account. Then we use the get unique ID action to assign individual number for each expense request. Next, we'll be using set run name action so we can identify each expense reimbursement in the flow run history. Then we will be searching for the manager of the employee who submitted the request. Also, you have rich PDF action set that is available to you. So for example, we can merge several receipts into one PDF document. And finally, we save all of this information into the Zenphi table. Now you have already seen how easy it is to set up simple approval tasks where the assignee have just multiple outcomes to select from. But what if you need to gather more information within your workflow? And in this case, the request data action would be very helpful. And it's basically the same Zenphi form, but you can use it not only in the trigger, but at any step of your workflow, and insert the dynamic tokens where needed to make it unique for each expense request. Moreover, you can also set up notification, reminders, expiration dates, and more. At the end, we'll also have the approval workflow that you're already familiar with, so we won't stop here. So to be mindful of time, we won't launch this workflow now, but I highly encourage you to launch this template yourself and test it, as it will give you the fastest understanding of how system works and how you can start building automations for your processes. So with that, we open for the Q&A part. Please feel free to submit your questions under the Q&A button that you should see at the bottom of your screen. And while you do that, I will go and check the chat. Okay, we have one question. Where can I find the templates for the flows from today's webinar? Thank you for the question. So in terms of the expense reimbursement process that we have just reviewed, you can find it at the stage where you create a new space. And if you switch to start with a template, you will see a range of the templates you can choose from. And what about other flows that were shown today? Even though we don't have the built-in templates for them yet, you all receive the assets for each workflow along with the webinar recording to your email inbox. So for each flow, you'll receive a JSON file that you will be able to import and customize. And also, you'll receive the detailed step-by-step guides on how to set those automations yourself. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. Okay, I can see some more questions coming in, and that is awesome. But unfortunately, our webinar time is over for today. Again, thank you so much for joining. Hope it was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at success@zenphi.com, and we'll be very happy to help you out. And for those of you whose questions weren't answered, we'll get back to you via email as soon as possible. And also, if you all have a minute, we'll be very grateful if you could submit a short survey that will appear at your screen in a second. And that will help us provide you with more helpful content in the future. Okay, so with that, thank you so much and hope to see you soon. Goodbye.